Being the founder of Leader in Making, I was always very excited to host people from XLRI because Leader in Making maximum, we have people from HR background. And also we have maximum inquiries and questions from people who want to make their career in the HR function, and who can come and guide us better than a student alumni from XLRI Jamshedpur. I am so happy and thrilled to welcome you, Trisha, on this platform, working as a intern in Nestle. I was thrilled to see your journey from science to BR to HR, and we would definitely like
Yes.
to hear from you that how you have navigated through such journey and how you were able
Yes.
to enter into the most prestigious, one of the most prestigious HR institution, not in India, but in the world, XLRI. We welcome you
Thank
from
you.
core of our heart. And please know, we have professionals at all levels on our channel, Leader in Making. And guys, this is your best opportunity to inquire or to ask anything from Trisha in the comment section once you are hearing this podcast, because we are not going to leave her in just one podcast. Over to you,
Sure,
Trisha.
sure. Hello, thank you so much for that very, very warm welcome. So where do I begin? Should I begin with why science to architecture to an MBA in HR,
Oh,
or
we would
should I
love to
directly
hear,
get into?
because, for me, it was really
Yeah,
amazing that you had a very different kind of graph, from science to B Arc, and then
that's
immediately
true.
you completed your B Arc, and in the same year you went
Correct.
to XLRI.
Directly.
How you even
Yeah.
cracked the process, that is also very important, and I'm so curious to know all that. Please go ahead.
Sure. So, science honestly wasn't it wasn't a decision that I put a lot of thought into. In India, you know how it is. If you're a good student while growing up, they say science karo. So that's basically what happened. I got good
Okay.
marks in 10th standard, and everybody said science karo, and I had never disliked the subjects. I never had any other preference at that time. So I took science, and it was at the beginning of 11 that I began thinking that I didn't want to do engineering or medicine. So the school I went to primarily had people who were there to do engineering and they had taken computer science, and the people who had taken biology wanted to do medicine. And I was very sure that I didn't want to get into one of these conventional paths, and I didn't really enjoy the subjects to the extent in which I wanted to become a specialized professional in that. But I always really enjoyed maths as a subject. It has been one of my favorite subjects since 8th standard. And I also coincidentally had gone to drawing classes since I was a kid. From the time I think I could hold a pencil, I was in a drawing class. And I've participated at various levels of state competitions, district level competitions for painting, sketching, etc. So architecture was something I thought that fit the bill of not completely being a design abstract course, like let's say a bachelor's in design, but it also had some amount of practicality, structure, and maths to it that I knew will still keep me rooted in some extent with my science background. At the same time, gives me an opportunity to hone my other skills that I had, which was what governed the decision to move into architecture. And so, yeah, I wrote the entrance exams for architecture, and I cleared it and got into RV College of Architecture, which is, I think, still hopefully in the top 10 in the country, and definitely in Karnataka, it's at number one. And during my 4 5 years of architecture, so that decision also, so nobody in my family is an architect or remotely a part of the construction industry. No background of everybody in my family has had very conventional careers, if I may say so. So I think around the fourth or fifth year, when I began actively seeking architecture internships and working in firms,
Mhm.
I realized that first of all, architecture also technically is building a business, which we're not taught about in an architecture college.
Okay.
The ultimate goal, unlike, and let's say when you become an engineer, or let's say if you do a BCom or a BBA, you can always work for a corporate company. You're reporting to somebody. But
Sure.
when you do a course like architecture, I think architecture, medicine, law, these are three courses where the end goal is to start your own practice, your own firm, right? Or your own firm with your name. And that is very hard to do without adequate connections in the industry, is something I believe, at
Okay.
least for architecture. And definitely not impossible, I will not say that, but it requires consistent effort and years of hard work of collecting contacts, building your name, and then starting your own practice and funds as well. And that is something very hard to do if you don't have connections. Also, the kind of stipend and the salary you get isn't really if you, let's say you want to do it from a very financially independent point of view, where you have no support from your family, it is a very hard thing to do. Not saying that I did not have the support, but it was always a goal of mine to be self-reliant and not live off my parents' money for a certain period of time. And apart from that, I think it was also the sheer passion. I saw my bosses at these firms, the sheer passion. They breathed and lived architecture. And while I really enjoyed the course, I did not envision myself being somebody who could think of architecture from the time I woke up till the time I got to bed.
Yeah.
And my parents have both technically done management. My father is a marketing professional, has been a part of the industry for I think 25 years plus now. My
Okay.
mother as well did merchandising from New Delhi. So they had both been exposed to the corporate world and the management side, and they were very keen that I do a management degree for a long time. So,
Okay.
which was when I decided to consider doing a management degree in my fourth or fifth year of architecture. But then again, after 5 years of doing a course as abstract as architecture, I wasn't sure whether I had the confidence to move to a hardcore MBA that is completely business management.
Okay.
And Sunita, another thing that I really liked about architecture was the fact that so before any exercise or any project, there is a lot of user group analysis. You study the client's mind, you study who you're designing the project for, you study their lifestyle, what their needs are. So, if I may say so, it has a lot of psychology involved in it. And I also really enjoyed catering to the clients. That was one of my favorite parts about interning, when we had our client interactions and meetings, understanding what they want. So I always knew that I was a people person by the time I began to finish my graduation.
Okay.
And that was when I was looking at types of MBAs. I looked at many. I looked at construction management MBA. I looked at hardcore MBA. I looked at environmental science MBA. I looked at a lot of types of MBAs. And that was when I came across MBA in human resource management that XLRI offers. And then I looked at the course contents, and it was something that really spoke to me. I thought that I could do something in that field, and I knew I would be happy with it. So that was how I arrived at the decision of doing an MBA in HR management. Um, Having said that, the story of how I got into XLRI, if I may say so, I think is 75% good fate and 25% hard work. Because in my final year of architecture is when all the students are required to complete a thesis. And this architecture thesis is a very it's something that requires a lot of dedication, hard work. A lot of people don't clear the thesis on their first attempt. It's not a very easy journey, if I may say so. And I was very clear. I told my parents ki, dekho, this saal I will write the entrance exams to get an idea of where I stand. Let's say I get only an 80th percentile or even 75th percentile. I need to know where I stand with respect to the population that is preparing for these exams. So next year I will focus on covering the gap and closing the gap and aiming for a 95% above percentile. That was the mind state with which I went in to write these entrance exams. I wrote CAT and XAT both. Um, so I did not. So the entrance exams, CAT happens towards the end of November, and XLRI's entrance examination, that happens in the first week of January. So the August of that year is also when my thesis semester began, and when I signed up with Time coaching classes for weekly coaching classes for the entrance exams. So weekends around 2 3 hours every Saturday, and they are full classes on Sunday to train us for it. But then that also I found myself being very irregular with as my thesis workload picked up. So I had a slight break in between from college in around September, 2 to 3 weeks break. I dedicated those 2 3 weeks to finishing the time books material all by myself. Whatever books were there, I went slightly ahead of the class because I was very worried about the fact that I had not technically done any logical thinking or analytical thinking for 5 years that I'm sure my engineering competitors would have been doing as a part of their course. So especially mathematics chapters that I'd lost touch with, I made sure I made a list of what I used to have difficulty in. And I tried to finish the entire portion by September. That is the maths and the logical reasoning part of it. English is something actually I grew up reading books from the time I was a kid, thanks to my mother. So I think verbal was never something I was very nervous about. Of course, I had to improve my vocabulary. I downloaded a couple of applications. I don't remember their names right now. That gives you one new word a day to learn. I did do those kind of things, but my main focus was always on the quantitative aspect and the logical reasoning aspect. And I think November 1st to November end, before CAT, every morning I would set an alarm for 5 o'clock. I would wake up and solve a mock paper. either a past year paper or time actually has this very interesting option where you can solve mock papers of just a particular section. So for example, otherwise what I used to feel is when I'm solving the entire paper from start to finish, time management is definitely something I'm learning, but I felt like verbal reasoning I did not need much practice. I wanted to focus more on quant where my scores were coming lower than I expected. So time, you can select which section you want to keep practicing, and they keep designing mock papers just for that section. So I kept doing that for the last 1 month before my CAT entrance exam. Um, my CAT percentile was around 91.5 percentile, which was not obviously good enough to clear to get into the top 6 IIMs. But it gave me an idea of where I stood, and it was definitely much more than I expected. So I was relieved. I was like, okay, this is my first attempt, along with so many other things. So next year, after I graduate, I will take a break, focus on this from start to finish, and crack it, is what I thought. Then again, my focus, I mean, in the bottom of my heart, I always wanted the HR program more than a business management program. So I still had hope left for XLRI's entrance. And that was January first week, like I said. And December was when I had my thesis mid-review. So I barely got time to practice for that, if I'm being very honest. And I went into the exam just based off my CAT prep and thinking that of course, did a ZAT. I did the 5 days with preceding the exam. I solved past year's ZAT papers and went. And I had a feeling that this was going slightly better than the CAT entrance papers. So the difference between ZAT and CAT is XLRI entrance exam has another section called decision making. So decision making, I think, encompasses various decisions that are required from their point of view in a business school student's mind. For example, I'll just give you an example of a question. Or let's say there is a project to build a dam, or no, a bridge connecting an island and a city. So there are various aspects you have to consider. The fact that let's say there are fishermen that would travel to and fro across that area for fishing. They're going to lose their job once the bridge gets built there because the biodiversity will shift. Then at the same time, a lot of people, like the boat ride people that would get money for the fare they would take from transporting tourists across, they would lose their jobs. But at the same time, the pros are they're building a lot of scope for development for that island. If a bridge is connecting it, it means industries, job opportunities will get created. So there would be multiple choice questions in the decision making section that would ask us. Let's say you are a representative from the developers community. How would you convince the population of the village that this is a good decision? And there'd be 4 options by saying this argument, this argument, this argument, this argument. And I found that very interesting compared to CAT, which I felt tested surely your speed of thinking as well as your accuracy. This also tested a slightly different bent of mind. Enjoying the entrance exam a lot, if I may. There was also a small essay portion that the ZAT entrance has about a topic that is very, I think anybody can write about it if they have general knowledge about democracy or what your opinion is about any current state of events that is happening. So I remember being very happy after writing the entrance exam. Mentally told myself, okay, even if I don't get it, like I enjoyed writing this entrance exam, next year I'll pakka focus on cracking it. And then the results came out, and here I had 93.5 percentile. Now here I cleared all the sections. So I knew that I would be getting a shortlist from XLRI. Same time, I don't, for some reason, all the inspiration stories you hear, everybody has 97 minimum percentile, right? That have gotten to these top tier 1B schools. So I thought maybe like, as per rules, they are supposed to keep a cutoff. That is the cutoff my year for HR female non-engineering was 87 percentile. My percentile was 93.5. So I was clearly above the cutoff. But something in my mind always, I had this notion that they only take people above 97 percentile. So, but I'll sit for the interviews and the group discussions if there are, because I'll treat it as a mock preparation for next year when I do better. And that was the logic or the mindset with which I went into it. And then I began reading articles on Quora as I began prepping. That was when and then I began reading answers and stories of aspirants that have got 88 percentile, 89 percentile, and have, graduated with top class in their respective institutes. Then I realized that maybe once you clear the entrance exam, you're on equal footing. I'm sure for maybe business management or other courses, the percentile has a weightage for sure, but I realized it is not cumulative necessarily. I think once you reach the interview level, you're on equal ground. Because that is when I first started getting hope that, what, it might happen for me this year. My dreams might get realized this year. And that was when I was a trainee architect with a firm. I remember I used to study in the bus every morning, current affairs, general knowledge on the way to my firm. I used to work about 10 hours, 11 hours there. Then on my way back, and this is Bangalore traffic we're talking about, minimum 15 to 18 kilometers from my house, I would have to change two, three buses, one auto. And if there wasn't light with my phone's flashlight, I would keep going through my notes and seeing before my interviews. And like I said, because HR was a preference, my BM interview luckily was scheduled before my HR interview. So I took the BM interview as a practice. I knew maximum nervousness is going to be for my first interview. So I took out all my nervousness, I think, in that interview. So I was well prepared for the HR interview. And on that day, I told myself, like, this interview is very important. You're on equal footing. You, a 99 percentiler, and me, who's a 93.5 percentiler, have equal chance of clearing it. That was something I had to keep affirming within myself. And I remember my interview went very well. So I had a feeling I would be waitlisted, if not accepted directly. And touch wood, the day the first list came out, my name was in it. And 29th April was when I got my result.
Wonderful. And I was so engrossed in your story that as if it is happening in front of my eyes. Now, if I reflect back, whatever you have shared with us right now, that has changed my mind right at the moment. And before going ahead with all about XLRI, I want to deep dive with you for that, because I'm sure the moment I'm going to post this podcast, there are going to be more than 100 inquiries. Ma'am, let us know more about that first. And I'm so
Sure.
happy that we have got you today on the channel, the person who has appeared for CAT with, I think, just 4, 5 or 6 months of preparation. And another 2
4,
months you
5.
appeared for that. And you remember the essay, the writing, the questions. So now I'm changing the track a little bit. And whatever you remember at this moment, first we would like to hear that. And we want to deep dive that what you remember for CAT and what you remember in detail for XAT, because XAT is an exam which needs to be given if you want to enter into XLRI. And what you as an aspirant to do a PGDBM program from XLRI into HR, for you, what was the difference, the technical difference between both the exams? So if you can help us in going little deeper with all these aspects in this podcast, please.
Sure. So, I think CAT, if you've heard of these maths Olympiads that you have in schools while growing up, maths, science Olympiads,
Not
CAT,
many, not many.
yes. Yes, so I was someone who regularly wrote those exams thanks to my mother putting pressure on me, which I think did help me in the long run. I think that was the reason I was able to rewire my mind so fast after a course like architecture to be able to, write those entrance exams without much difficulty. So CAT reminded me a lot of those Olympiads, where the focus is, so CAT was a 2.5 hour exam. Sorry, a 2 hour exam it had got reduced to by my year, where the focus was clearly to speed is your number one priority and accuracy along with it. I remember those were the two things I had told myself that if you have these two criterias, you will do well in CAT. And my issue, looking back in hindsight, I think was my speed wasn't developed enough. I think those 4, 5 months of practice were enough to, my concepts were clear then. Given the time, whatever I solved was accurate. Like if I look back on my answer key also, I don't think there were many questions where I had negative marking. The issue was not me not attempting enough questions in the given time. So I think speed is something I would ask anybody to focus on for CAT. If you have speed on your side along with like at least 90% accuracy, it is definitely a game changer. With that, I feel like what helped me was it's a 3 hour exam. So the pressure in general for me, the time clock wasn't ticking in my head constantly like it was for CAT.
Sure.
And that also, like I said, had decision making and the essay section. So there are 4 sections in that. If I'll start
3
clearly,
hours test.
one is the 3 hours exam, 4 sections. The first is verbal. The second is decision making. Third is quantitative. Fourth is GK, general awareness. The essay is included in the general awareness section.
Okay.
So, and you can attempt these sections in any order. You're allowed to do that in the exam. So I would always, I was comfortable with verbal and essay or those kind of things. So I always eased myself in by attempting those sections in first and moving on to sections that I found slightly more difficult. So that by then the nervousness is reduced and I can fully focus on what I'm doing. So I feel like because it's a 3-hour exam, as it is, the time pressure is less. And things like an essay, I think, or maybe what do I say? I think or type faster than maybe the average people. So where if there are people who can solve math problems faster than me, I was making up for that by typing an essay faster than them. Or reading, my reading speed also, I think, is slightly higher than most people. So I think where I lacked in the speed for solving quantitative, I made up with for the speed of the verbal reasoning part and the essay part.
Okay.
So overall, I remember looking at my clock constantly and thinking that I was doing well on time for that particular examination.
So
Or
you appeared
see,
for
this could
complete
also be,
online, you mean to say, instead of pen
yes,
and
both these
paper.
exams are online. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
so that is only online in the sense everything is on the computer system.
Okay.
CAT as well was, oh my God, I don't remember clearly now.
That's okay.
I remember we had a rough paper sheet. No, CAT also had a system. Yes, CAT also
Okay.
had a system.
Okay.
So, so yeah, so I think, see, it could also be I had learned my lesson from CAT. Maybe it could be because that was
Yes.
purely after
You
CAT.
prepared,
Maybe if
yeah.
the exams were swapped,
Mm.
I would have done better in the second exam. Who knows? So these are all hindsight biases I'm coming up with right
Sure.
now.
Sure.
But I did feel that, yeah, that was something that was a big difference. And like I said, the decision making section is something like a lot of my peers wrote both the exams with me. And one constant feedback all of us I heard saying was that decision making section ka we don't know how to prepare for.
Okay.
Because all of the coaching class material also you get, they don't really prep you for decision making section. The material I also got from time, I even had some of my neighbors in my apartment who were kind enough to give me their old IMS material. That is another coaching institute. They did not have any decision making sections to prepare from. So
Okay.
online, I searched for some. There definitely are available. But like, you know, how coaching class mentors can teach you how to solve for these sections, what is the trick, or, you know, for decision making, I don't think there is any clear explanation out there yet. So that remains a mystery. That is completely dependent on in that time, in that moment, how your mind works. So a lot of people's fall, like even if they've done excellent in that, has been decision making section. That is where people tend to lose marks or, you know, not perform as expected. And that I will still say I think is also 50% luck on that day. You know, if you like ultimately, I still think a lot of the answers are subjective. Even now, I will argue that. So I think it also depends on how much your mind, you know, aligns with the mind of the person who has set the question paper. Like, you know, you believe that both of you believe that decision A is a correct decision to take. Maybe
Okay.
decision B is also correct decision, but maybe A is a more less complicated decision. So based on that, they have marked that as the correct answer. So it is
Mhm.
a very, I feel that part is what is interesting to that and stands out and is slightly ambiguous to prepare for.
Okay. So when you reflect back to your own journey, and students will be
Yeah,
appearing for CAT in November and XAT, of course, in January, and we are just
yeah,
what 3-4 months, away from November. What would you
correct.
like to suggest them that what areas they should start preparing? Somebody who is not from, who has never liked GK so much, or who,
Hmm,
unlike you, people don't have that much of great reading habits, or they have
hmm,
not appeared for maths olympiad or any such
hmm.
olympiad, because I completely 100% agree with you that this kind of test do matters a lot, especially it gives great impact on your speed. So right now, when
Yes,
we have still students still have 4 to 5 months in hand, what tips,
yes.
technical tips, would you like to offer to them?
So big, I'll go one at a time, section wise. So I would say, for the verbal section, just read as much as you can. Read magazines, read newspaper articles, wherever there is good vocabulary. I will not say read Instagram posts because the vocabulary is very mundane vocabulary. Try and read articles on LinkedIn, articles from blogs that they follow, reputed
Okay.
blogs, articles in the newspaper, anything that has language that is not language that we use in our spoken English. Try
Okay.
and read as much as possible. So your vocabulary automatically improves. And honestly, it's not like, see, it is impossible to mug up every word in the dictionary. That is
True.
a very unfair demand out of any student. The only thing possible is to know enough words or understand the language enough to be able to guess the meaning of a word when it comes in a sentence. If you understand the language enough, based on the context, based on the sentence in that paragraph, you should be able to figure out what that word means, even if you've not seen it before. That is the
Okay.
level I think you should aim to achieve when it's the verbal aspect that is concerned.
Okay.
Regarding quantitative, if I still feel like if you're from a course like such as engineering or a course that has required you to, or there are a lot of people who do pure BSc physics or BSc maths.
True.
It is, you definitely, I feel like, have an advantage and to continue training as so. But if you're from a course like, let's say, BBA or design or architecture like myself, where you haven't touched upon maths in a while, as much as other courses may have, then just keep highlight, go through all the portions in the material that you get from any coaching class you join. Ideally, I think the ideal time to join a coaching class, if you want to appear for the exam in November of the year, is to join in January.
Okay.
That is the perfect time to join, according to me. But
Okay.
if it is a last minute decision or you've not planned properly and you're joining only now for an
Now,
exam that is coming, I will not say all hope is lost. But then you need to make sure you cover a certain amount during the entire entrance exam. I
it's a
mean, the
simple
entrance exam
calculation that
preparation.
if you are joining in January, you have roughly 10 months. And if you are joining in June,
Exactly.
you have 5 months. So you have to double
Exactly.
up with your hard work and efforts.
Exactly. That is the only thing to do.
Yeah.
And I will still say one thing that I think every candidate should aspire for is 1 month before the entrance exam, stop learning. Whatever you've learned. Now just keep doing mock papers. Keep getting used to the
That's
time
a great
management
tip.
aspect,
Sure.
the nervousness you get. Then you begin to know ki, what is your fluke rate. Let's be honest, everybody does mark some tukkas or some flukes in their entrance exam towards the end. So then you also get an idea. Are you able to make educated guesses? What is your hit rate when it comes to that? Like, if the chances, 90% of the cases, whenever I've marked an answer with pure guesswork, if I'm getting it wrong, it's better to not mark. But if there's even a chance ki 75% of the cases mera sahi aa raha hai, even without knowing the answer, then maybe you can take the risk of marking one or two guesswork answers in the exam. So all of that, you begin to learn yourself and gauge your abilities in that last 1 month where you're only doing mock papers for one
Mock
month
papers.
prior
And
to the
you should
exam.
avoid negative marking as far as possible for you.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Yeah.
That is
Okay.
all the game. You have to understand yourself and your abilities.
That's a
That
great
will
tip
vary from
for all
individual to
the, yeah,
individual.
for all the viewers that last 1 month stop learning and see where you
Yes.
are standing in your learning and appear for
Yes.
mock interviews, mock test every day. And the way Trisha was doing every day morning, used to get up at 5 and appear for the Times or any other coaching institute, because we are just telling you how you can proceed forward on your journey. So please tell us more about the next section.
Yeah, so logical reasoning, and so it's LRDI and CAT, logical reasoning data interpretation, very similar in XAT. The portion is the same for the both exams. This also, I would say, I think a lot of, if you have done Olympiads while growing up, it definitely helps.
True.
But if not, this is something I feel like some people very intuitively are good at it from the beginning and they don't require much help. But this is also a section I feel like is the easiest to teach somebody. I remember in my time class, if people had doubts with this section, I feel this is the section where the learning growth curve can be the most steep. Even if you are bad at it or you feel like your skills are not great, with the help of anybody who can explain it to you, it is very easy to understand. The minute you crack how your mind should work, there are typical types of problems also in this section that keep repeating. You know that there are people are sitting around a particular table, who's sitting next to whom, people are sitting on a bench, who's sitting next to whom, and direction sense problems. There are a particular, like here, I feel like it is not easy to get surprised in this section. Let me put it that way. The chances of getting surprised in a quantitative section or decision making section are higher. Here,
Okay.
for sure, you will not see a question that you have not practiced before.
Okay.
It will be a category that you have practiced. It is just about in that moment not making mistakes, thinking calmly, and cracking the answer. So this is
Sure.
a section that we, like, the, what do I say? The syllabus is very clear.
Okay.
So this also, I will say, will just come with practice. It's not something to be worried about, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay. And the last section you mentioned to be
The
GK.
Yes, GK. So, GK, I will be honest, I am not somebody who used to actively read news on a daily basis. I did
Okay.
have the TOI app on my phone. So, whatever headlines would come, I would keep reading. But I was not the type that would open the whole paper, read end to end. I was not, whatever I would gather would be, from if I'm hearing around me, if my family is discussing something that has happened. I will not say I was the best or most aware I could have been about general knowledge. I honestly picked it up only, during the course of exam preparation, where I made it a point key end to end. I will read all the headlines every day. At least headlines I will be aware of. And apart from current affairs, another aspect of GK that I think is important that candidates should know is this is from more from an interview aspect, I would say, if I can just digress. But be thorough about the history and the knowledge of the place you are from. For example, my hometown is Bangalore in Karnataka.
Okay.
So you can expect what were the dynasties that ruled, when did Raja Vodaya rule in Karnataka, what was the Vijayanagar Empire's expanse, what is the history of Bangalore, who set up Bangalore, who was the founder of Bangalore. If I come, like the interview can say, if I come to your hometown, what are 4 monuments I can visit and go back? So we all know famous monuments of our country. That much basic GK we all have. But of a particular city, of a particular hometown, how many of us can name 4 to 5 monuments or historical sites?
True.
These are not things that people actively know unless they have an interest in it. So I think at least regarding your local geography, you should be aware very clearly about the history, about the culture, dance form, food habits. A complete deep dive into at least your region or things pertaining to you, you should be aware of. But I will not limit it to that. In fact, an interesting thing I would like to share. My last question in my HR interview for XLRI was, Trisha, if you have to travel by train from Bangalore to Jamshedpur, which is where XLRI is, what are the states you will cross?
Oh my
And
God.
so that
Okay.
is just, and luckily I used to be very into geography from the time I was a kid. I know all the countries, all their capitals. I was one of those. Luckily, this was up my forte. So then I imagined the map of the country and I said, yeah, Karnataka, Andhra, Telangana, Orissa, then Jharkhand, and we'll reach there. Otherwise, if there is a detour to West Bengal and then Jharkhand, I don't know how it works. So they were very happy with that. So, but I kept thinking, what was the intention of the question? Why would they ask something? What does it have to do with how good I am going to be at HR management? It's not really related, is what I thought first. And then I realized it was more, are you ignorant? Like, do you just know only about your world and your surroundings? Or are you aware of your spatial surroundings, the country you live in, what states surround you? Like, okay, आप हो बैंगलोर से, आपको आना है जमशेदपुर. Do you even know where Jamshedpur is with respect to you? That was
Okay.
what they were testing, I think, in my
Okay.
opinion.
Okay.
So, yeah, a global understanding of, yeah, I think they just want to make sure you are not indifferent to your surroundings or ignorant to things that are not relevant to your lifestyle.
Okay. So this is for the first time that I'm hearing that, interview when you have beautifully incorporated that aspect into GK, that, it is very important for learners that from wherever you are, she's trying to explain from the interview per se perspective as well, that you must know from where you belong. So as a coach myself, as a career coach, I would like to add on to it. When you know about your being in that zone, you will, if you are aware about your own surrounding, then only you will be aware about the other unknown surroundings in time to come. And this is definitely an important HR perspective. Maybe it is being used in the companies at later stage, that apart from your own awareness and well-being, how much beautifully you are taking care of others around you and their cultures and their being. I was very curious to know that you used to see the latest headlines on TOI app. So before
Mhm.
your cat and before your ZAT,
Yeah.
कितना पहले आपने उस ऐप को डाउनलोड किया था?
No, the app was downloaded from first year architecture.
First year up, wonderful. So you were always seeing the
Yeah,
headlines.
yeah.
Okay.
Headlines तो I used to see on the app, but proper reading newspaper, physical newspaper के headlines मैंने बस वो सितंबर अगस्त में ही शुरू किया था before the entrance
Okay.
exam.
So this is a very unique strategy, guys, that in case if you're not able to go in depth in every news, download a download an app, any app for that matter, and just see the headline so that when you are appearing for GK or maybe for an interview, which we are going to request Trisha to share the complete interview process in the next podcast, the second part of this podcast, you must see the headlines, you must read the headline at least to bring it into your subconsciousness that something happened like this in the news, because that is definitely going to help you in the thread in the GD and interview process at the latest stage. Trisha, I found your strategy is very unique, and I must acknowledge and appreciate that good academics whether it is Olympiad, which is not a part of your core syllabus or curriculum, or any such reading habit, and even taking interest in geography has really helped you and contributed to your preparation, I should say, in such short duration. So guys, if you are listening to Trisha and the way she has explained that, it is not just her journey of those 4 or 5 months. She was unknowingly preparing for these entrances, if you see.
Exactly.
And everything has contributed well in place at the right time. And that is why she was able to clear CAT or ZAT. कई students को ये ना लगे कि त्रिशा ने तो 5 महीने prepare किया, time ने last moment support किया. Those were, I think, the supplements for a candidate and a professional like Trisha. But I think she has inbuilt a lot of strength already reading. Then she was good in Olympiads. Then she was very good with geography. She was very open in her internships, and then she realized with her intuition and gut feeling that HR is something she would be very, very keen. Thank you so much, Trisha, for helping us to know the difference between CAT and ZAT and helping the candidates to understand ZAT for the first time in so much detail. I think they are listening it for the first time on our channel from a person who has done HR from XLRI, because ZAT is a must. In the second podcast, we would really request you how you filled up the application, what all aspects a candidate has to focus while filling the application, what was the process after application, GD, interview, and how you were going through that process, GD and interview, and how students can now prepare, because you are a 24 pass out and you have appeared for this process in the year 2022, and in June I think you took the admission. So stay tuned, listeners, because the second podcast will talk about how she filled up the application after the entrance when she got that 93 percentile beautifully from an architect student. I think you were already destined to do this course because unknowingly you were preparing and you had two pillars in your life, your parents, into your learning.
Yes, definitely.
And then how you appeared through the GD and interview process. In the second part, we would definitely love to hear that.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for letting us know that part. We'll see you soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.